I just finished watching a movie called Changing Lanes with Samuel Jackson and Ben Affleck. And I always sort of put that off. I think I watched it briefly years ago, but I always put it off. Finally got to watch it. And very good, very good. And I wanted to watch actually a different movie. But anyway, but I wound up watching Changing Lanes. And I wanted to do the video on the theory on human evolution before I had watched this movie. And as I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking, this would be a great intro to my video of the theory on human evolution. And the way the movie's set up is, you go about your daily lives, and all of a sudden something happens out of the sudden. It's just a sudden occurrence happens, and it changes your daily routine. And through just a sheer chance, it changes your entire life for the day, and hopefully you get it back on track, which, well, of course, is a Hollywood movie, so, it got back on track. And I actually gave it 5 stars, but I should have really gave it 4, because it ends with a scene with traffic changing lanes and the characters on either side of the street. And the way usually life works out is, and I don't mean this in any bad way, but either Samuel Jackson walks across the street to the family, or the family walks across the street to Samuel Jackson. And the irony of life is you get hit by a car and die. I mean, that's the way life would work out, right? But of course, it's a Hollywood movie. But I gave it 5 stars because of the great acting by Samuel Jackson and Ben Affleck. I don't really like Ben Affleck, but he did a really good job in this movie, so I decided to give it the 5 stars. So anyway, what's that have to do with the theory on human evolution? Well, it has a lot to do with it. In the very beginning, and I spoke about this in other videos, but in the very, very beginning, there was an intense heat, and it created the Big Bang. And there's be many Big Bangs before and after the Big Bang, because our solar system will eventually contract to the point of becoming, all this stuff that's in the solar system will actually contract to the point of almost absolutely nothing, and then explode again, so to speak, or Big Bang again, and expand, contract, and that's pretty much what it's all about. So that is the beginning of our solar system, and then through processes, through different chemical formations over extremely long time, billions of years, we wound up with water molecules, or the H2O, and then eventually wound up with one-cell creatures, amoebas, and things like that slowly reformulated into fish, and then fish into amphibians, and amphibians into mammals, mammals into birds, into land animals, eventually into humans. And that's pretty much what it is. And there are those that accept that, and there are those that do not. And those that do not are the ones that are into God, into religion, and into everything else that really has nothing to do with reasoning levels, but it has to do with imagination. Because you can imagine anything, I mean, the movie Changing Lanes is a perfect example. Some writer, for whatever idea popped into the mind. Maybe the writer had circumstances in his own life. They had a flat tire on the road, and then he started thinking, that'd be a great idea for a movie. And then he started thinking of characters and plots and how the plot will go. And before you know it, he had a screenplay, and then he was able to sell it to Hollywood, and then whatever have you, and then you make a movie. So that's imagination, but it's Hollywood film. It's not in real life. That is, people that actually create religions over a long period of time, create gods with lowercase g's, or God with uppercase G, and then you can call it, God wasn't always God. It was probably some other, I'm sure the Romans had their own God names that we know of that have been in the mythology books. And the word God, I think, actually came from an old Germanic phrase, Gott, G-O-T-T, I think, and and then you have Allah, you have Hashem, I don't know, all kinds of names for God, right? So, but that's mainly imagination, and people can't put that in perspective. You can't separate a Hollywood movie from living your life in this whole structure of what God is, or religion, even though all it is based upon someone's imagination that created this religion in the first place. And then over time, like the Catholic Church, the Pope changes things around accordingly, or rabbis change things accordingly, or pastors change things accordingly, and things like that. And you add a little here, add a little here, add a little there, add a little there, and before you know it, you have religions that change over a period of time, but based upon whatever generation you're in. But it all comes from the mind, it's all imagination. But people will take that as fact, as a truth, think it's God. But anyway, really, it's very simple where we really all came from. And I did a video before, I can't remember what it was called, that the best way to understand the Big Bang is your own sexual orgasm. And when you have a sexual orgasm, the moment you have it, there is no time and place, but there is intense heat. And that's how it was in the Big Bang. As far as understanding it, and people say, well, you were never there. You were never there during the Big Bang when that happened. Well, actually, anytime you have a sexual orgasm, it's the same thing as being there at the time of the Big Bang, because of the moment the Big Bang happened, there was no time, no place. There was actually nothing and something at the same time, and extreme heat, and that created all the solar systems, and then eventually these solar systems will contract and create these Big Bangs. These Big Bangs go on probably all the time. And, as far as, saying we only have one universe, probably multiple universes outside of our universe. One thing is guaranteed is things and space. You'll have space, and even space is made up of matter in an extreme abstract sense. You have antimatter, matter, anti-energy, energy. It's all basically the same thing, meaning one feeds off of the other. So really, you need that for and against. You need that positive and negative kind of thing going on, and in between you have the neutral, just like what is it? I don't know my chemistry that well, but you have I think it's protons, electrons, neutrons. It's basically that same basic structure of for and against and then neutrality, but it all plays off of one another. I don't want to make this video too long, but because it's a question of accepting the fact that everything came from this extreme heated moment that was nothing and something at the same time, and that it expands and then it will contract. I mean, if you or I or whoever could live for 1 trillion years, can you imagine living for 1 trillion years, let's say? Let's say you could live, I'll go further than that. Let's say if you could live for 100 trillion years, eventually you will experience the moment of the Big Bang, or, you know, more or less 100 trillion years. Maybe it might be less than that, but eventually all that will actually contract, and you'll, I mean, if you lived 100 trillion years, you would actually experience the moment. Well, you'd probably be dead by the time it contracts, but let's say if you can live through that contraction, and this is purely imagination, of course, but let's say if you can live through that contraction and actually experience that Big Bang, then you realize that what I'm saying is fact. But a lot of people cannot, or actually the not only the moral majority, but the majority of people can't understand that. So, and sometimes, especially if it's the moral majority, they're the ones that dictate the way people think. So I'm one of the few that could be considered insane, because I don't have the numbers to, you know. Sometimes, like if like a perfect example, United States Supreme Court, right? This is a good example. United States Supreme Court has 9 justices on it. Now, I'm just picking on this court. It could be any court or any kind of, you know, court or committee or anything. And so you have 9 justices. And even though those 4 dissenting judges can be correct in their own opinions, because the 5 justices outweigh those 4 justices, those 5 justices actually make the law that everyone in America will live by. Even though those 4 justices have dissenting opinions, could be even one of those justices out of the 4 could be absolutely correct. But because it's 5 against 4, automatically, well, those 4 or even that one justice out of the 4 does not matter. So, and that one justice might be 100 years ahead of his or her time. But because the 5 justices outweigh the 4, automatically that's law, or that's quote unquote the truth. Well, the same thing with the people that are in the moral majority. They dictate what the truth is going to be, how you're going to live, even though they may be absolutely wrong. The same thing. So, those that believe in human evolution as opposed to God creating everything, or of the minority, and for the most part, are not believable, even though reason dictates otherwise. So I could talk on and on in this video for the next 100 trillion years, and wouldn't matter, because the majority dictates that what I'm saying is wrong and therefore should not be listened to. But anyway, I just wanted to put a little video up, because actually I spoke about this in another video which goes into more depth. But that's pretty much where we came from. You know, we came from this moment in time which existed but did not exist at the same time, and then it expanded, and then it will contract. And I wanna say one other thing. Humans think that we are like so great, you know, we're the greatest thing that happened in the entire solar system. It's very difficult for humans to see that we're really no different than a rock. We're no different than an animal. We're no different than an ant. We're no different than planet Pluto. Or if it's a planet, right? No different than the satellite that's traveling out into space. We're no different than some other solar system that's forming or contracting and turning into another solar system, whatever have you, whatever you want to call it. Where humans are trapped in the ego. We're trapped in the ego in the sense that I am this, I am that, you are this, you are that. And that you also is an I, meaning that the person you're speaking to is also thinking in terms of I am this, I am that. So we think we're great. And don't get me wrong, humans are great to a large extent. I mean, you know, I think for the most part, I think humans try to do what's good for the most part, or else we would have killed each other off by now, especially considering that we have nuclear arms and all this, you know. But I mean, we could have completely did away with this planet probably a while ago, you know, about 40, 50 years ago, period of time there. But you know, we think that, well, once a human's gone, you know, it's all gone, and it's really not. You know, shit will exist outside of the human experience. It just will be different, be much different. Even if it's just rocks or different kinds of chemicals out there, or whatever you want to call it, things will still exist outside of the human, even though most of our life is very subjective. There are things that are out there like this. See, that means that there's actual things that are out there. You know, like I did this in another video, you know. See? That means something is out there. This thing does exist. This pen that some guy created, I don't know, 100 years ago or whatever. I don't know, about 50 years ago, whoever created this bit pen does exist. Well, same with all the other shit that's in the solar system exists, even without us, without humans. And these things have just as much quality and have just as much value or intrinsic value in and of itself, even without the humans on Earth, or humans on any planet for that matter, or humans in any universe, or if we ever get to that point. So we shouldn't think ourselves as such great. Well, we're great. For the human experience, we're great. But outside of that, there are things out there that will exist even without us. And a lot of people can't fathom that, or can't understand that some rock flying through some solar system 100 billion years away, 100 billion years, maybe 100 billion years, but let's say 100 billion miles away from here, from Earth, from planet Earth, there's a rock the size of Montana flying through space 100 billion miles away from Earth, has as much value in and of itself as you and I on YouTube. But a lot of people can't understand that. The difference between humans and that rock, as far as I know, is that we experience pain and pleasure and we have families that we want to raise and try to school and teach well and do well, as opposed to this rock that can smash into some other planet or some other material object out there and splatter into a zillion other little rocks, and then, you know, unless there's some kind of living species within that rock that has that characteristic of caring, cares about whatever it is and its offspring. You know, it's a little abstract, a little crazy in a way, think about it, but still, I mean, it might be, you know. So the point is outside of all that, I mean, when you really take it as a whole, as you take the whole entire universe as a whole, we're just one little tiny piece of the puzzle. And if you could put it in that perspective, you realize that this whole universe or universes or whatever is out there, there's more of that out there than there is of the human experience or the humans on Earth. And that all that will exist just like this exists without the human experience, without the human, without us consciously being aware of things around us and our life, and I am I, or you are you, or, you know, whatever, who you are or what you are. Anyway, that's my theory on human evolution as a whole. You take everything put everything in perspective. Someday, I think maybe someday, eventually we'll be like biochemical, man-made parts, meaning we'll probably have like some kind of computer chips in our brain that can manipulate our thinking and our physical actions. Eventually, maybe 500 years from now or whatever. Some people call it androids or whatever, you know. But that's our future, you know. I'm not going to be here for that, but that's, you know, many generations in the future. That's where we're headed anyway, if we continue on down the road that we are. And there are those that will create those beings in a lab. Maybe even, I don't know. Oh, this is more of science fiction, but maybe a extreme remote possibility that when you're actually born, that you will have those chips in your brain, that not actual physical chips that are implanted in your brain, but that your brain will be so wired over such a long period of time or through so many generations that your brain will actually develop its own quote-unquote chip, and it'll be more chemical and biologically based, of course, but, you know. Anyway, that's more science fiction. That's for something for the Hollywood movie. Hollywood movies, maybe some screenwriter that just wrote Changing Lanes will write something like that. Anyway, that's my theory on human evolution. Guys, have a good day.